Each year, Microsoft Research hosts hundreds of influential speakers from around the world, including leading scientists, renowned experts in technology, book authors, and leading academics, and makes videos of these lectures freely available.
Hi, I think we should get the process underway since we're the statutory 4 minutes late. My name's Tony Hay, and I'm Corporate VP for Technical Computing in Microsoft, and what we have today is a technical computing mini workshop, if you like, with two speakers who are going to tell us about the future of digital libraries, and I think this is an important area, and to me it's quite surprising, but I think that scholarly communication, publication, data publication is on the threshold of a revolution. I think libraries are facing great challenges. How do they compete if their books are all digitized and their search is done by Google? How do they compete in the future? What's the role for libraries? So there's many issues here, and so I'm very pleased that we have two talks today. One, Where Google and Libraries Meet. It wasn't my title, but that's the reality in the library space, I'm afraid, Mike. And the next talk is about Library 2.0, is about the Web 2.0 technologies and how the internet is transforming libraries and how libraries have to transform themselves. And that we have Justin Leavesley from a company called Thales here, but his talk will actually be streamed, and he will be here to comment on the talk after the talk or during it. So I'd like to begin then by welcoming Jenny Walker, who used to work for a company called Ex Libris, but now works for X-Refer. I got that right. Yeah, I have to not say reefer. And she's going to tell us where Google and libraries meet. Very good.
Can you hear me? Yeah, that's working fine. Well, good afternoon. It's very nice to see some people here today, particularly with a title like this one. And Tony didn't invite me to come and give this talk, having heard me give it before, so if Tony nods off, I quite understand. And I'm really not sure how I really came to do this presentation in the first place. I think it was in Portugal last year I was asked to step in and fill a slot that was left by Anurag of Google to talk about Google. And I said, well, I can't give Anurag's talk, but I will talk about how I see Google intersecting with libraries. And what's really clear to me is there's a subtext here about Google and libraries, and it's partly about trying to say to libraries, just wake up. You know, librarians have such amazing skills to offer to the community, but they haven't really exploited them. And you know, if they're not careful, libraries are going to change from right underneath them, and they may have slightly different roles. But also, as you'll see from my talk, just to, you know, really an encouragement to libraries to say, embrace what companies like Google are doing in this space and work with them, because I think there are real advantages to be had. So,
companies like Google.
I did. So there are three key areas I wanted to talk about. Google in the scholarly domain, just to really run through, and this was a presentation originally prepared for librarians. How many librarians are there here today? Oh, quite a few. Okay, good. And I'm not a librarian, so I look forward to hearing your versions too, but I've worked in the library and information space all my career. Talk about what Google's doing in the scholarly domain, talk about Google Scholar in particular and some of the library links programs, and then just a very brief comment on what I think it means, a threat or an opportunity. So just to start with Google in the scholarly domain. But before I can do that, I really need to just say a little bit about the library domain as it used to be, and in fact in most cases still is. It is, as Tony said, about to undergo a real revolution, but for many libraries they're still very much in this space. So today they have many different resources. They have library catalogs. So the original automation in libraries was around automating the card catalog. And then as electronic journals came into being, There were many, many systems to actually provide access to electronic journals. There were the abstracting and indexing databases. And so we had both the information providers and we had software vendors, the information providers creating the material, software vendors creating solutions to provide access to that. And so today in any library, a good research library here, you can go to their website and you'll see an A to Z list of 300 plus databases. How anyone finds anything is a real mystery. And they particularly don't find my product because we start with an X. So plan to change that. But what interested me was that a year ago, OCLC, which is an important organization in our industry, did a survey of libraries and information resources. They surveyed, as you see here, over 3,000 respondents aged 14 to 65 from a number of countries, predominantly English-speaking. And what they found was that a significant number of resources researchers started their searches using one of the many search engines. And those who came to the library website was really woefully small. So despite these many, many different systems and services that not many people were coming. Now, subsequent to this report, OCLC did a report specifically on college libraries, so more of the research. And the results varied a little bit, but not dramatically so. So again, the second one, where do you typically start your search? It's not surprising. 84%, I think it is, start with a search engine. 1% started with a library website. And I noticed just in looking at this again yesterday is this survey, even though it was done just over a year ago, there's a complete absence of any of the social networking tools. There's no MySpace, there's no Facebook, there's no YouTube, and it's wonder how that would change things today. And again, this is just another one that shows, what would your first choice be, and which ones have you used, and what's your first choice. But I think you get the picture. So all this effort that's going into creating these services and creating these tools around these services is in some ways to no avail. Search engines are the primary starting point for research information. So what are these search engines? I'm sure you all have access to much better information than I do on this, but the libraries were very interested to see some of the search engine statistics. The last one I had was from August 2006. And then at the time I gave this talk in early November, this site had just come into being. Now there are rumors that Microsoft has confessed to sponsoring this site, but who am I to say? But has everyone seen this, MissDewey.com? Okay. So it's fun anyway, but it's not very good in terms of the search engine. So in talking to librarians, I thought it was really important to just give them a little bit of a sense of Google. And again, I'm sure you know far more about this than I do. So I won't spend time on the specific details, but what I loved, and being in reference publishing, I liked the fact that there was a big to-do about Google not being a verb. I worked in the early days of SFX, and which is a link resolver. And I really tried to make it very clear that SFX was a particular product, but I loved it subsequently when in my company I would get an RFP from a library saying, what is the name of your SFX server? Isn't that great marketing? So why Google chose to say, well, no, you can't use it as a verb is a little bit of a mystery to me. This is the thing that just really got to me from the very early days of Google. This just resonated with me in a way that was just quite significant. So Google's mission is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. Now, this was not an unfamiliar statement, and librarians amongst you know that that's what librarians have been saying for a long time, only they wouldn't have said the world. So suddenly the horizons just broadened just quite spectacularly. So the librarian's mission had been to organize, preserve, make accessible the library's resources. And this was really just branching out quite dramatically. But what about specifically the library, where Google and libraries intersect? So 3 of the key products that I want to mention here are the Google Book Search, which started life as Google Print, Google Scholar, and the Google News Archive. But there are many others that play in this space. So in this last quarter of 2006, there was the announcement with Blackboard, the course management system. That was in October 2006. And then in November, there was the acquisition of the wiki startup, JotSpot. And I thought this was interesting. You know, quote, Google's acquisition of JotSpot validates the notion that people want to do more online than just read. So true. And the web is moving from a monologue to a dialogue. So if we look at Google Book Search, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the concepts here, and I'm not going to spend too much time on this. But in the case of Google, the book search includes both the publisher's program and the library program. That's not dissimilar from what Microsoft is doing. So what we have is the publisher program is where Google worked with the publishers, the in-print publishers, and indexed both the full text and allows both full text and the metadata search. So you can actually get the full text of a search. I've chosen a nice South African example. It's where I'm from originally. But it's just very nice, the fact that you can search the entire contents of these books. And depending on the copyright, you can see as much or as little as is allowed. And it allows you to directly go and see the table of contents and so on, and to go and page through it or buy the book. There was a cash register. What it also allows you to do, and the connection here is with the libraries, where it actually allows you to first, before going to buy the book, you can actually go and check to see whether this book is in your library or a neighboring library. And that's through a partnership with OCLC WorldCat. Just incredibly useful. But still, I think most people want it online and aren't even prepared to walk to the next building. So also in the Google Book Search, this is more about the library search, is this particular record that I found is one that's actually been digitized from the Bodleian Library. And again, you can do full text search on this, and I just loved it. This is a really quite an old text, but I can't read it here, but you can see it. Politeness is essential to please the ladies. And it requires much money to travel comfortably, as we all know very well. So the Google Library project, it started in December 2004. And the original partners, as I'm sure again you know, were the Google Five, what had become known as the Google Five: Michigan, Stanford, Harvard, Oxford, and New York Public Library. And they've continued to add a number of sites, so I think there are now 10. University of California, University Complutense, Wisconsin, University of Virginia, and Texas, which was announced, is it this week or last week? Anyway, very, very, very recently. But I found a quote from Ronald Milne, has until yesterday was the acting director at the Bodleian Library at Oxford, who said, to quote, "Digitization on this scale surely represents a step change in the dissemination of information that parallels the impact of the invention of printing from movable type in the 15th century." That's a really, really significant statement. And he further went on to say that Thomas Bodley, who founded the Bodleian Library in 1602, intended that that library should be accessible to all who had need of it. And it's what he referred to as the Republic of Letters, which is a lovely statement. And it seems to me that the Bodleian ethos has surely found expression in the digital age today through this project, and Sir Thomas would be very proud of it. What's interesting about I know about the Oxford project, it's a legal deposit library, so the material that's being digitized extends way beyond scholarly books and journals, and it includes trade literature, railway timetables, post office directories, and other ephemera, which is really interesting if that's what you're going to be looking for. What was interesting in a survey that was done by OCLC soon after the Google Library project was announced, in looking at the holdings of the Google 5, is that of those 5 libraries, there was a suspicion that there'd be a huge overlap, but 56% of the works are held uniquely by one of the Google 5 libraries. And 50% of those holdings were in a language other than English. They were all in English-speaking countries. That was fascinating to me. And there's a total of 430 different languages just amongst the Google 5, and that's now been significantly extended. This is wonderful stuff. The Google News Archive was subsequently launched in September last year, which was an aggregation of archival news. And it included both free content from newspapers as well as for-fee content, such as Washington Post archives, newspaper archive. And it was no surprise to discover that the lead developer on this was Anurag Acharya, who was responsible for Google Scholar. But again, this is playing very much in the library space. So here's just an example, and I love these timelines. You know, in terms of doing your research, what a great thing has to. I did a search on Nelson Mandela, and it immediately indicated to me that the majority of the articles that were found were in 1990. Who knows what happened in 1990? Yeah. So, you know, it's just really, really interesting facts that can be obtained through this, and free. And you can browse through timelines and see how things progressed. So Google Scholar. So first introduced in November 2004. And the goal was to provide the best possible scholarly search. So the idea was to include scholarly literature, peer-reviewed papers, theses, books, preprints, abstracts, technical papers. And to be just a single place where somebody could find all of that scholarly material at any time. And it was going to be fast, fun, and familiar. All those things that are very important in user interfaces. It has relevance ranking, it includes citations, which are important in scholarly literature, and links to libraries. So here's an example of a search. I think I used avian influenza. And what we see is you can do both a simple search and an advanced search. Now this is very important in a library context. This is what librarians and library users, researchers are used to. They want to be able to very finely tune their search to get the best results. So it provides for, specifically by author and title and by subject. It links to the abstract of the article, or when available on the web, the complete article. And it has relevance ranking. It does sort of tell you how it's ranked, but it's not always entirely clear. And it provides links to alternate versions of articles. So if there's one version of the article available, say from Elsevier, which is not available to everyone, there may be alternative versions of that article, for example, a preprint. So you may find that actually there is a version of this article in a DSpace repository, in this case at Erasmus University. So it's a very nice tool in terms of providing you with alternative access. It also provides a cited by feature, so it indicates other papers that have cited the specific paper. That's always important to researchers. Although I think there's a lot of work going on in trying to improve some of these aspects. But I like this in terms of cited. So it says, in this case, number 1 to 10 of about 331. Well, that's not going to make librarians very happy. They like their precision. But maybe it's good enough. And then you have the library search capabilities. So once you've found something that you want, you can then use OCLC's Open WorldCat to actually find where that book in this case may be. So just to focus a little bit on Google Scholar and library links, how do you actually link Google Scholar directly to your library? Because of the licensed resources primarily, libraries still subscribe and spend significant sums of money on licensed resources. I heard some figures from the University of California where I think it was public knowledge that they were spending something like $8 million with one publisher alone. Won't take you long to guess which publisher that was, but very significant sums of money. Many of you probably know Roy Tennant, but I thought this was so apt and we should keep reminding ourselves, because librarians have been very focused on the search process and getting to it, but really what it is about is actually finding what you're looking for. And finding is really typically about accessing the item itself, not just that the citation or the abstract. But Google Scholar's default access is not always appropriate. In other words, typically Google Scholar will link you directly to the publisher site for a particular article, except where it's been found elsewhere. And it may not be appropriate because there's an enormous amount of aggregation that goes on, and the user's institution does not necessarily have access to a particular article directly from the publisher. So in this case, if we look at a particular article, this is available from AAS, and I link directly through to the abstract, to the citation in the abstract, and I say that I want the full text. But when I click on the full text, it tells me that I don't have access. Well, there's nothing more frustrating to users. So what has Google actually done about this? So just to say, it's known in library terms as the appropriate copy problem. You need to be able to get to the appropriate copy for your institution, which may be a particular version of this article through another database, an aggregated database. In fact, it may be to the print copy that's on the library shelves. And the solution for this is actually something called open URL-based linking. And I know at Microsoft you're also working in this area. So you need to take advantage of institutional link resolvers that know where that article is available from. And it's under the institution's control, because only the institution knows where they subscribe to that resource from. So if you're coming from within a pre-registered range of IP addresses, then it'll just work for you if it's been pre-registered. But if not, I'm not a member of any institution that has a link resolver, but I can go to Scholar Preferences, and I can actually choose which institution I want to be affiliated with. So in this case, I've said I'm at University College London. And then if I save that preference, when I next go back and do my search, you'll see that it tells me, it says SFX, which is the name of the link resolver, at UCL, University College London. And if that appears in big letters at the top, I know immediately that my institution has full text rights for it, and I can actually get directly to the full text of that article. And it's through a link resolver, so this is just an example of University College London.
So does that pop up when you click on one of those articles?
Yeah, and the institution can configure whether they want to see a list of menu items of how to get to it, or go directly to the article itself.
So is that by actually uploading holdings?
It is.
To them directly?
It is, and that's all done automatically by the link resolver. So Google harvests that information from the link resolver and then knows when to put up that link. And if there's no full text available, then the same text will appear, or different, it can be customized text. It'll appear further down to say that there's no full text. Well, why would you want to even tell them that there's no full text? Because that's what libraries are about. Libraries are about getting you the information. If it's not available electronically, they'll get it for you in print. If it's not available in the library at all, they'll do a document delivery request or an interlibrary loan. So it is important that the user has a way of getting to that item. In this case, it tells you that it's not available electronically, but it gives you other options to get the full text, including a pre-filled in document delivery request form. So just looking at some of the developments, although it was first released in November 2004, it's continued to develop. So some of the things, library-related activities that have taken place in 2006, was to be able to link with a reference tool of your choice, to be able to save citations in a tool of your choice, RefWorks, EndNote, Reference Manager, or so on. There was a significant increase in the non-English language material, and 15 national or regional union catalogs were added in 2006. So a significant amount of information are now available through Google Scholar. The open URLs that enable that linking directly with the library, they're not perfect, but they're getting better all the time in terms of manipulating the metadata to facilitate that. And as you asked a moment ago, the libraries do need to provide the holdings. That process has been automated, but today that seems to be the best way to do it. I'm sure that'll improve, and in fact earlier today we had some discussions about that. And there's only a holding summary, so it just says whether you subscribe to a particular journal or not, and not necessarily where you get it from. That's proprietary information.
What about things that might be user-specific, where faculty might have access to students in college?
That's not through this. It's not working today. Now, Link Resolver will allow that. And again, what we observe is that users have many different, they can get their resources through many different places. So sometimes you're affiliated with 2 institutions, sometimes you have your own personal subscriptions, and you want to see everything. But I think there's progress there. It's to do with authentication and identification. I think there's going to be some significant change in that soon. So just looking at Google Scholar in the open URL, there are some issues. It doesn't work perfectly, but it works pretty well. And I think it's really significant to note here that a major non-library vendor, in fact not just Google, but also Microsoft, so major non-library vendors have adopted a library standard. So for librarians and those of us involved in the library community, this is very, very significant. And that Google and Microsoft have worked with libraries and Link Resolver providers to do this. And I think this is good news for the entire community. And with the open URL, Google accepted 2 new policies. One was linking to URLs that are not crawled, and to enable institutional branding. There's very little other place where you can actually brand a Google site with an institutional identification. So these are some significant changes that took place. At the last count in October 2006, there were getting on for 1,000 Link Resolvers registered in many countries around the world. So this is something that people find useful. Usage is picking up, but getting Google Scholar used in libraries is also about education and some marketing. Just making it clear to users of libraries that this is what Google Scholar can be used for, and this is what's valuable. So we start to see more and more links from library websites. So this is Stellenbosch University, where they provide a list of interesting resources, and they include Google Scholar. Mike, that's your challenge. Got to get the Microsoft one there too. And here's another one where the library has actually gone into great detail to describe what the purpose of Google Scholar is, what it's useful for, when to use it, and how to get to it. And there's a lot of promotion, and libraries are doing more and more of this, and we see the usage increasing quite significantly. So what's some of the good? Well, the good is that for libraries is that it has the Google branding, which is very familiar and it's very easy to use. It's a single place for everything. They don't have to go to a particular database for one thing and another database for something else. It covers a broad range of resources, and I'll come to that in a minute, and it has some important features. It's very quick, and it has relevance ranking, citation searching, and there are a number of buts. And it links with the library. So what are some of the issues? Well, Google has never been clear about what's covered and what is not. And I take my hat off to Microsoft for having been very clear about that, and also for having reached agreement with 2 of the key publishers who are not part of Google Scholar. Coverage is often partial, so it's not clear whether something is included or not, and that leaves significant doubt for users. It's not context sensitive in that There's no distinction between the licensed and unlicensed resources. And it doesn't cater for different types of users. It treats all the users as the same. And that's not true of specific resources that are available within libraries. It has relevance ranking. It has some issues of accuracy. What about new works? It's not user or discipline sensitive, and no one's really quite sure about how it works. And it has no sort options. Actually, it does allow for you to filter by recent articles. And when I tried it this morning, I got exactly the same results as without the filtering. So I'm not sure what's happening. But I have some slides that just show some of the problems. And to this, I thank Peter Yaxo from the University of Hawaii, who loves writing about problems with Google Scholar. I haven't seen him yet at TAC. Oh, I did. Okay. But personally, I find him useful for doing some, testing. If there's a problem, he'll find it. But here's just a case of, as Peter Yaxo called it, innumeracy, basic Boolean blunder. Did a search for serials, got I think it's 53,000. Did a search for serial, got 972,000. Did a search for serials or serial and got 743,000. Well, librarians pay attention to that. Does it really matter at the end of the day? I'm not sure. But it's fairly obvious there that something's not right. Here's another example that I liked. Limited a search for an article to be from the year 2006. And when I look at that article, link through to it, I discover that it's actually from 1990 and it's page 2006. Well, some of this stuff's hard to do. So, but you can take a look. Peter Yaxo has wonderful stuff on his website pointing out some of the failings. But here's another one. This is supposedly scholarly information. I did a search for Da Vinci Code and I found that there. I'm not sure that really belongs in a scholarly resource, but maybe. I looked up a particular article on APS, and I think this was the, yeah. And when I searched for it in Google Scholar, and that should have been covered, it just wasn't there. So it leaves doubt in terms of, am I going to find what I need, what's missing and what's not missing. There are missing citations. I went to Web of Science and did a search for a particular article, and I think it was cited 32 times. I went to Google Scholar and found that same article is cited once. So it just leaves sufficient doubt that it may be useful to just find information, but I'm not sure how much I can rely on that information. In this case, this was, I think, from citation linking, and it duplicated the number of sites because, in fact, these two articles, these two listings here point to exactly the same article. So what are some of the other issues? There's a lack of library control. They can't choose which sources they want to search. There's some branding issues. Doesn't integrate terribly well with some of the other local systems that libraries would like it to integrate with. And it's really not clear what the business model is. It's been in beta for nearly 3 years, or over 3 years now. And who's to say that it will stick around? So how much are people going to rely entirely on this? And if you're interested in more of the differences, then say that Peter Yaxo has written on this. My prior colleague Tomas Sadeh has written a lot on Google Scholar versus some of the meta search systems, and so has Roy Tennant of CDL. So what does it all mean? Well, Google Scholar is not perfect, but then other products aren't either, and other library products in particular. And I think it's really important as we go forward to differentiate between what's really critical and desired, and also between what's inherent in this information, in these systems, and what's temporary and will change and will improve. But I think that many of us and many of the librarians and the users in from the libraries find it useful enough, it's good enough, and are using it anyway. And I think this has been an important lesson to the library community, that in some cases, good enough is okay. So what does it really mean an end for library services? There's a lot of stuff going on here that's very useful to library users, but do we think it's the end of library services per se? I personally think absolutely not, and believe that there really is a place where Google and other search engines and libraries can meet. It's not an either-or. I think there's a role for specialized information resources, specialized tools, specifically domain-specific tools, databases like PsycInfo and PubMed, and a role for web-wide discovery tools like Google, like Microsoft. And Google may have been the first, but others are definitely following. So when I'm talking to librarians, there are at least two things that I encourage the library community to do. Firstly, to ensure that Google Scholar, Windows Live Academic integrate well and utilize what libraries have to offer. I encourage librarians to engage in conversation to ensure that that happens, both with their physical and the digital collections. And I encourage libraries to learn from Google and others, because to better understand the needs of the users. I think that this is something that they've clearly shown us. This is what users are using. Let's understand why, and let's try to adapt. So for the first of these, one aspect is to encourage the use of the open URL to create links between the search engines and the library resources, and also to encourage libraries to actually publish at least the information that they're responsible for and have control over to the search engine so the information can be found. And secondly, to learn from these search engines to provide better discovery tools for users, to provide better ways to help users get to the relevant information. I think it's really thrilling, and I think it's wonderful that Google, Microsoft are indexing the whole world's corpus of information. I mean, just think about that. That really is quite remarkable. And it's likely going to prove useful in ways that we haven't even thought of yet. But that will be only one set of tools that really support genuine inquiry. And I believe that librarians must be among those that highlight the importance of the skills that go into that genuine inquiry. I think it's an ongoing discussion. And I know that the US National Academy of Sciences is concerned particularly with this topic. They're concerned that science education in the US has become the study of a body of knowledge rather than developing the skills to support genuine inquiry. I've been fortunate, actually, prior to joining XRefer, when I was still at Ex Libris, I sat on an advisory board of XRefer with Terry Winograd, who's a professor of computer science at Stanford. And he's very interested in working with librarians to help define what it means to make sense of what you find, developing those information literary skills. And as I recall Terry quoting on one of the calls, the more people find things on the web, the more they'll need to make sense of them. And that's the challenge for all of us, is what does that actually mean? Thank you.
I think we have time for a few quick questions, if there are any. Yes?
So anybody compare CiteSeer versus Google Scholar in terms of citation, etc.?
CiteSeer is beloved of computer scientists.
Yeah. No, I know. I'm not aware of it. Yeah.
CiteSeer is just one.
Yeah.
There's other ones.
Yeah. No, I haven't.
I was trying to get that serial or serials example off the web while you were going.
Yeah.
And I wasn't able to find it. I wonder if you could send a reference.
Oh, so are you looking in Google Scholar?
Well, I was just looking Google generally. Should I look in Google Scholar?
That was in Google Scholar, but
No,
and it changes dramatically, and I haven't updated my slides.
I didn't want to replicate the numbers. I knew they'd
Oh.
change, and especially once you publish,
Yeah.
the bug's been announced, they
Yeah.
fix it. But I was hoping that the article that you were referring to, I could find.
Oh, the PTXO article?
Yeah. I couldn't find it.
That's not there? Okay, I'll have to look and find it.
Maybe you could help me offline.
I'll try and do that. I know that at some point last year there was a flood at the University of Hawaii, and a lot of stuff went missing. So it is just possible that that's one of them. But I think it'll be moved. I'll try and find it for you. Yeah. Well, there are lots of questions there that could get.
Could you repeat the question?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I...
Yeah. Sorry. So the first part of your question was I didn't get the name of the resource that you wanted to.
Commercial search companies like LexisNexis.
Oh.
Yeah. How do they react to the phenomena of Google Scholar and Google Library and such? So that was question number one. And number two was about the value of inherent value of metadata actually ends up being much higher over time.
So, I mean, there are many different information providers who I think are very threatened by some of the stuff that's going on. But it's not just about Google Scholar. For many years, the companies made lots of money out of abstracting and indexing of the journal articles. And now the full text is available and searchable. And it is starting to have an impact. I know that Ovid, one of the companies that's been in this business for a long time, have just made some significant changes in their organization. You can see companies merging. So in terms of, I think that whole, it's not just Google Scholar, it's the whole, the fact that data is available on a mass scale now and searchable and effectively searchable. But still, I think those companies play some role in adding some value in terms of the description of that resource and making it more discoverable, providing the context for it. But they're all struggling. I can't comment on LexisNexis, but they're all struggling.
No, scholarly societies like American Chemical Society and the IEE with its InSpec, I think must feel threatened by this sort of development. If you can get 80% for free, then...
Yeah.
Sorry, there's a...
Whenever the question of Google's ambitions for digitizing all the libraries in the world comes up, the first question that comes up, and I was surprised I didn't see a slide on this, is copyright. From the point of view of a user, of course, I want to have access to everything. From the point of view of a publisher and author, I would want to control my rights very strictly, and I understand that a lot of them are incensed that Google is taking this approach. So my question to you is, what do you think the rights are that Google ought to have from people who have not explicitly given them rights to their works, and how do you think this will actually end up being resolved?
That's just huge statements there, and I'm not even going to go there. I suggest you look for, there's lots on the web from Mary Sue Coleman from University of Michigan, who spoke at a conference last year trying to defend Michigan's role in making all information available. And there is the American Publishers Association has taken Google to court, and I don't know if, Mike, if you know the results of that, or if it's been resolved. The AAS court case challenging Google on the copyright issue. So it's really a minefield, and I'm not sure it's all been resolved. They argue that it's wrong even for Google to hold that information, even if they don't make it available to people who aren't authorized to see it. So I think there's still a lot of stuff going on. But Michigan and Mary Sue Coleman was very adamant that they were on the right track and they were okay. Oxford is still being very cautious. They've only gone with indexing of the out-of-copyright work. So I think it's an ongoing debate. You need an expert.
What will Oxford do with the digitized data they get from Google?
I haven't heard yet. I've asked that question many times, and
because it'll cost them to put it up, and then they can't index it as well as Google. So what are they going to do with it?
I'd love to know when you find out.
A couple more questions. Well, we'll take 3 questions and then I'll move on.
This is going really to that same point. You noted that of the 5 Google libraries, there was a 50% or something, 56%, I think, were held only by one collection.
Yeah.
That goes to the question of how do the vast number of private collections then now enter this this search system. If that's really only material that's available from 5 collections that's been indexed, even if it's vast.
I know.
Of course, it's quite small compared to all the information that's being held in private collections. And is there any new work going on to sort of take this further beyond that 5 basic collections?
Well, it's gone from 5 to 10, and it will inevitably go beyond that. But I know that individual libraries had started to do a lot of the digitization themselves before Google came along, and the amount that they'd managed to do in a number of years was just minuscule. So this is really enabling it on a really grand scale. So an individual is unlikely today or in the next at least couple of years have the means to be able to digitize it themselves, and I don't see Google stepping in to do private collections. So maybe a private collector needs to look at donating their collections to one of the big libraries.
Well, will the Internet Archive have a book digitization process?
That's right, yeah.
But they have limited numbers.
That's true. Yeah.
It's the same.
Yeah.
A couple more questions. There was, I think, one there and one here.
Back on the issue of the value proposition for some of the existing bibliographic database providers, way back when I was an academic librarian a long time ago, we were discussing, as more and more things were coming online in full text, that the value of having controlled vocabularies and an underlying thesaurus for bibliographic databases like InSpec was the way that we taught the students coming in to do research. What's the temperature right now in the academic research community about full text really obviating the need for any of that?
I don't think I've heard anyone say that full text yet obviates the need for it. I think there needs to be further developments to ensure that you can get some of the desired functionality that some of those databases provide and leverage some of that. Yeah, but I think it's getting there fast. Yeah.
Was there another question? One more, last one. Let me have a 3-minute break.
So more than a decade ago or so, I had some visitors from LexisNexis, and I had some friends from SIG-IR, and they were getting a really hot debate between free text and Boolean, and the LexisNexis guys said, well, the librarians want Boolean, so we ship Boolean, and we don't want to hear any of your whatever. I wondered, is that debate still going on, or is that dead?
I'm not hearing it as often as I used to hear it even a couple of years ago. But, yeah.
Okay, well, thanks for your interest, and let's thank Jenny again for stimulating.